Hi guys, it's Michelle and today's video is going to be yet another childhood ruining conspiracy theories video for you guys. I honestly really love doing these videos because I love talking about like my favorite childhood TV shows and movies and characters and just completely ruining them for all of us. I think these style of videos is so fun. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first conspiracy theory I want to talk about revolves around Rapunzel, specifically Mother Gothel. We've all heard the conspiracy theory. I feel like I've talked about it, but the conspiracy theory that Mother Gothel is actually the evil queen from Snow White. I actually found that theory to be incredibly believable, and I believed it up until I heard this theory that Mother Gothel is actually Meg from Hercules. Obviously, we know Rapunzel gets her powers of living forever, but also being super young and beautiful forever from the golden flower, which then becomes her hair. The only thing we really know about how the golden flower came to be is, quote, a single drop of sunlight fell from the heavens. So the conspiracy points to the fact that an actual drop of sunlight would cause like a huge fire and probably wouldn't make a golden powerful flower. Also interesting to note that the drop of the sun happens at night in Tangled, which makes no sense because obviously the sun would not be in the sky at night. The scene of sunlight falling from the heavens to create the golden flower, actually, if you compare it next to the scene of Hercules being kidnapped, it's pretty identical. Hades also refers to Hercules as Sunspot multiple times throughout the movie. You might be asking the question that Hercules takes place in Greece, and obviously we know Rapunzel takes place in Germany, so where does it all connect? Flynn Rider actually says that the flower was a hop, skip, and a jump away, which it more or less could mean any distance away. I feel like Germany to Greece is a hop, skip, and a jump. Like, that's how I would describe it. So throughout the Hercules movie, immortality is represented by a golden glow, something that is golden and glowing, and it's Hercules himself. And what else is golden glowing that represents immortality? Rapunzel's hair / the flower. So the Fates, aka the three sisters who kill people in Hercules by cutting their string, they can't cut Hercules' string because his is gold and glowing. Again, what else is gold glowing strings? Quite literally, Rapunzel's hair is thousands of gold glowing immortality strands. I think the theory of a drop of sunlight falling from the heavens and creating a flower doesn't make too much sense, but the theory of a god, Hercules, touching the earth for the first time during the scene where he's getting kidnapped makes sense that a flower of immortality, which is Hercules' power, grows right there. So the theory itself is that Meg is actually Mother Gothel, and let's talk about why. I would say one of the main things behind this theory and the most damning piece of evidence is that Mother Gothel and Meg both use the phrase "ya big lug." Ya big lug. Ya big lug. I think that's actually pretty notable in my opinion because like literally who the fuck says that? Never heard it before besides these two movies. So obviously at the end of Hercules, Hercules gives up immortality to stay with Meg. But what if Hercules dies first, and in order to try to search for some way to save Hercules, she goes back to the place where he was first introduced to Earth, where he was kidnapped, and she sees the glowing gold flower and knows that it has to be related to Hercules. But instead of trying to make herself young forever, she uses this flower to try to get Hercules to come back to life, which makes a lot more sense in the song that Mother Gothel sings in Rapunzel to her hair and to the flower, which goes, quote, change the fates design, and the fates are the women in Hercules who kill people cutting their strings, as we know. Gothel also sings, quote, save what has been lost, bring back what was once mine. I feel like that's a weird way to put like bring back my beauty, but it makes more sense if you're thinking of it of bringing back someone to life. Another interesting part of this conspiracy theory is the scene where Mother Gothel for some reason has a change of heart. After 18 years of keeping Rapunzel under lock and key, she ends up allowing Rapunzel to save Flynn.
If you let me save him, I will go with you.
Makes no sense because Rapunzel was chained up. No one else knew that Flynn was there. It would have been a perfect getaway. So easy to have killed Flynn Rider at this point and punish Rapunzel for running away in the first place. At that point, Mother Gothel had basically already won. So what is with this sudden change of heart? when Rapunzel just begs her to let Flynn stay alive and saying she'll live with Mother Gothel forever. Well, it's because she's actually Meg, and it reminds her of when she made a deal with Hades to sell her soul so that she could keep Hercules alive.
You sold your soul to me to save your boyfriend's life.
I guess it just had some sort of a soft spot for her. I don't know, it puts such an interesting spin on Tangled and Hercules, and it gives such an interesting arc to the character of Mother Gothel, because I do think that it is very important to note that she switches up in the last moments of the movie, and I feel like a big question about that is, why does she decide to do that? Another point to why people believe that Meg actually becomes Mother Gothel is that when Mother Gothel is singing Mother Knows Best to Rapunzel, talks about how she has to be scared of men with pointy teeth, which, who do we know that's a scary man with pointy teeth? Hades. I actually really believe this theory, which is weird because I really believed the evil queen theory. This one makes a lot more sense. We see this side by side of Hercules being kidnapped and the drop of sun creating the flower, and they're just so damn similar, and obviously they're made by the same company. Why would they create something so similar without it having some sort of a meaning? I believe it. Like, I think it does add up and make sense. And "ya big lug" is just such a damn specific quote. And honestly, the vibes of Meg, the vibes of Mother Gothel are kind of similar if you think about it. Maybe she thought that she could get Hercules back with the flower, but then once she wasn't able to, she discovered it gave herself immortality. Maybe she could one day figure out a way to get Hercules back to life, and that's why it was so important to her to keep Rapunzel and the power around and to stay alive so that she can one day determine how to get Hercules back to Earth. I don't know, but I do think that it is a very, very interesting theory, and I feel like there is some truth to it. Like I said, the scenes side by side are a little bit too uncanny. I believe it. The next conspiracy theory we're going to be talking about revolves around the movie Frozen. Frozen is probably one of my favorite Disney movies, like, ever. I love Frozen, but this theory definitely made me think differently about the film. There's a theory that Kristoff from Frozen is actually wearing Sven's mom. And by wearing his mom, I mean like a little coat that he is wearing is actually Sven's mother's skin. It's pretty obvious that outfit is definitely like made from a deer. It looks exactly like deer fur. It just makes sense. During that time, like, what else would they make their fur from? I feel like it's a deer. The reason that the conspiracy theorists believe that it is specifically Sven's mother's hide that was used to make Kristoff's coat is because it talks about the reason why Sven and Kristoff are so close is because Sven can still smell his mother on her hide that Kristoff wears. I will say that I feel like this is a pretty accurate theory. Like, I think that makes a lot of sense. But the question would be, for me at least, does Kristoff know that he is wearing Sven's mother? Does Sven know? Like, what's the deal there? Like, you know what I mean? Did Kristoff have to kill Sven's mother to get this coat? I have so many questions and not a lot of answers, but I would like to hear your theories on it. When I say I wanted to be like a wizard slash mermaid so damn bad as a kid, like, I actually thought I was going to grow up to become that. Like, I thought that was just part of my journey. I loved The Little Mermaid so much, to the point where I'm positive that there is a video somewhere of me 4 years old throwing a tantrum because my mom let my friend borrow my Little Mermaid bathing suit, and that was not okay with me. But something that I've never personally thought about until I saw this theory is what exactly made Ursula so evil. So there's actually a very interesting conspiracy theory behind Ursula's origin stories. It's a few different theories, but they all kind of have the same underlying theme that is actually backed up by the Broadway play, like the live action Broadway show of The Little Mermaid. And the theory is that Ursula is actually King Trident's sister. And there's a few different theories that we'll go into from that, but they all stem from that root that they are brother and sister, and Ursula is technically Ariel's aunt. So according to the first theory, Ursula was once a very beautiful mermaid, and she was the firstborn of Poseidon, and she was actually in line to be the heir to the throne. However, either some rule popped up that only men could be the heir, or King Trident is a little bit more evil than we expect, and he decides that it's actually he will be the king of the sea. In order to eliminate Ursula, King Trident actually turned her into the octopus slash sea witch that we see her as, you know, in the movie. And he turned her into this and told the rest of the castle, the rest of the family, that Ursula had died, and now he was the sole heir to the ocean. Since King Triton put this spell on Ursula to make her unrecognizable because now she's an ugly octopus, although Ursula never was ugly, and that's the tea of what you need to know about life, but whatever. No one would believe her story. People were seeing this like octopus come in trying to say that she was royalty. That is what made Ursula retreat to her cave, and she became super evil, stealing mermaids and mermen left and right to trick them, to put spells on them. Obviously she got the chance to do with Ariel. I actually feel like this theory makes a lot of sense because I feel like Ursula has to have some sort of a revenge plot as to what's going on there, because like, why is she so mad? Like, there's no real reason, no real understanding for that. There has to be something there. So the actual musical goes a little bit different, or it started out a little different at first. It started with the idea that Ursula and Trident were supposed to rule the sea together using their father's gifts that he gave them, which for Ursula was the shell and for Trident it was the like pitchfork thing. This adaptation of the conspiracy theory kind of starts out with the idea that Ursula was always evil because she wanted to rule the sea on her own. She didn't want Triton to have anything to do with it, so she took over and became evil, and that's what got her banned from the castle. I don't feel like this makes much sense, even though that is kind of the story that they try to play off in the musical at first, but then they changed the musical around. So then that song that was explaining that part of the story was actually replaced with another story that talks about how Ursula actually had 6 other sisters and King Trident as a brother, and she was like the ugly duckling kind of energy. Basically, Ursula's 6 sisters were super beautiful, and her father only paid attention to them and King Trident. Ursula was obviously really upset and hurt that she wasn't being treated right by her father, that it made her evil. And according to this theory, her father gave her the magical seashell as a gift because he felt so guilty that he didn't like care about her that much. So that was kind of his compensation for making, I guess, himself feel better about that. Ursula ended up using this for evil and became evil and killed all 6 of her sisters, which left King Triton and her to be the heir to the throne after their father died. But obviously, like I said, Ursula's evil apparently to begin with, so she uses her magic for evil and then eventually gets kicked out and is no longer the ruler of the sea. I feel like this is an interesting theory, and I think that there's obviously a lot of evidence to support it. Would love to hear your opinions on it. There are so many Little Mermaid conspiracy theories, really dark origins, but also even conspiracies about just the actual movie itself, that if you ever want me to talk about them, let me know. There are some really interesting ones about Ariel's voice. There's also ones about Ursula and Vanessa, because obviously Ursula takes a human form as this beautiful woman, Vanessa. But like who Vanessa really is, there's some theories behind that. So if you ever want to hear that, let me know. All right, the next 2 conspiracy theories come from Family Guy. I have been so into Family Guy lately, which is so annoying because I used to love it as a kid. I've been rewatching Family Guy recently because I don't know if you guys are on this side of TikTok, but I swear I'm on a side of TikTok that only shows like clips of Family Guy next to clips of like people cutting soap or something. And I saw 2 interesting theories behind Family Guy that really fucked me up because I loved the show as a kid. So the first theory is that Stewie is not actually Lois and Peter's baby. There's actually a Fox banned episode from season 8. It's titled Partial Terms of Endearment, where Lois jokingly mentions that Meg is Stewie's real mother.
You carry the baby. I can do it. Oh, come on, Meg. It was hot enough on your body when you gave birth to Stewie.
What?
I'm just joking.
So the theory actually goes that this is not so much of a joke, but actually truth. This theory explains why Meg is so poorly treated by the Griffins, and it's because they kind of resent her because they could barely afford to have 2 children. Then Meg gets pregnant. In order to cover that up and save her from, I guess, like embarrassment, they pretend that Meg's baby is Lois and Peter's. The reason the Griffins are so angry towards Meg is because she brought this child into their lives that they never actually wanted. The reason I feel like this theory low-key makes a little bit of sense is, one, that is a real fucking thing that happens. There are so many different stories of people finding out that their mother is actually their sister, and their parents that they thought that were their parents their whole life are actually their grandparents, and they do it to kind of like save their reputation, whatever you want to say, although I don't really think it needs to be. Like, that's a little dramatic in my opinion. But it's an interesting take because, of course, we see Meg be constantly mistreated, and it's interesting because we never really know why. We don't really get it, but at the same time as well, Meg and Chris are significantly older than Stewie, so it's like, regardless, I get the vibe that Stewie was an accident in general. Kind of an interesting concept overall, and I think it would make a very, very interesting episode if like that was true and they decided to go that route, where Stewie finds out that his real mother is actually Meg. Family Guy is one of those things where you just can't think too deeply about because it's like, it's not supposed to make sense. But there is a very dark theory surrounding Peter from Family Guy that I actually found to be pretty interesting. So there's a theory that all of the events in Family Guy are actually all occurring within Peter's mind. So this theory gets very dark. So it starts out with the idea that Meg wasn't actually an unattractive, unpleasant girl in school. She was actually super popular and very pretty. Theory continues that Chris and Meg went to a party and Meg ended up getting super drunk. When they were driving home, she got in a car accident that killed her and Chris. Because Lois was unable to grieve the death of her 2 children, she was pregnant at the time but ultimately committed suicide, killing her and the unborn child. The theory continues that this made Peter so insane. He just lost his entire family. He was expecting a new child and now this child was gone, and he was committed to a mental hospital, and the events of Family Guy actually take place in Peter's mind. So it explains why everyone in the show is so mean to Meg, but I feel like undoubtedly Peter is definitely the meanest to her, and it's because he harbors this resentment for her because she was the one who drunk drove, killing her and Chris, leading to Lois's death. The reason that Stewie is portrayed as a genius is because Peter never met his unborn child. He saw Stewie as having all this potential, just imagining what he could have been. And Peter also has some sort of resentment towards Lois for killing not only herself but their unborn child. That's why Stewie has this desire to kill his own mother, like a manifestation of Peter's resentment. I guess it also explains why none of the characters age in Family Guy. And apparently the only people who are really there and existing besides Peter is Joe, Quagmire, and Cleveland. So according to this theory, Cleveland, Quagmire, and Joe are Peter's real friends. They really did live on the same street together. So every time they're involved in the show, it's really just them visiting Peter in the mental hospital. Honestly, a really sad theory, and definitely makes you look at Family Guy different, although I do feel like Family Guy is definitely one of those shows that shouldn't have any conspiracy theory surrounding it, because it's like, bitch, it's not meant to be that serious. But I love doing that anyway, you know? I love having a conspiracy regardless. I would love to hear your theories on this. There are so many theories surrounding Family Guy, which I find to be interesting because I do think that it is meant to be not taken seriously. Like, that's kind of the whole point of the show. But I would love to hear your guys' opinions either way. All right, the next conspiracy theory that I want to talk about revolves around the show Max and Ruby. Max and Ruby, bitch. I loved this show as a kid. It checked all the boxes. I loved it. So Max and Ruby, of course, like every other fucking show, I don't know why they do this, but they don't have parents. They never talk about their parents, even though they have grandparents that are periodically seen in the show. No one actually ever knows what happens to their parents. And I'm talking about the OG Max and Ruby, by the way, because I'm pretty sure in like 2020 they did do an episode of Max and Ruby where the parents were there, but like, we're pretending that didn't exist, okay? So the theory goes that the reason that Max does not talk very much is because when they were younger, him, Ruby, and their parents were in a very terrible car accident that killed their parents. Obviously, Max and Ruby survived, but it left Max super traumatized, basically made him nonverbal. For the most part. He speaks sometimes, but in just very short sentences. It also explains Max's obsession with fire trucks and cop car toys, because that's like his last memory of his parents was that accident, which obviously was probably one of the first times he ever heard those sirens like in person right in front of him. Really freaking sad. But even a darker theory, low-key, like this one's really weird, is that Max doesn't talk because their grandma actually abuses him. I don't know where that theory came from, but it is really dark. He's abused by his grandma as a kid. It made him scared to even speak. Disturbing, to say the least. But honestly, the theory about Max and Ruby's parents being dead is kind of true-ish. Like, obviously I said there was an episode where we meet them, but before that there was an object on their fireplace, like mantle, that was shaped like an urn. People really believe this theory, and I am one of them. I think the first theory is more interesting because obviously it ties in Max's obsession with the fire trucks. Like, he's so into that. All right, the next conspiracy theory surrounds Lilo and Stitch. I loved Lilo and Stitch as a kid, and it's a theory, again, of what happened to Lilo and Nani's parents. So the theory goes that Lilo and Nani's parents were actually in the CIA. And Cobra Bubbles is not only a close friend of their parents, was in fact a CIA agent as well. According to this theory, Cobra Bubbles made a promise to Lilo and Nani's parents, saying that if anything happened to them, he would always make sure Nani and Lilo were safe. So this theory is actually kind of backed up with some truth. In Lilo and Stitch the movie, when the Galactic Council comes to collect Stitch, the leader mentions she recognized the social worker who was Cobra Bubbles and says that he told her that he used to be a CIA agent. Now, why would a CIA agent randomly become a social worker? The real reason is because he made a promise to Lilo and Nani's parents to take care of them. Theory also kind of explains why Lilo has such strange things in her room, specifically her books. She has a book called Roadmaps of Iowa. Like, why would she have that in Hawaii? And also Practical Voodoo. Maybe it was part of her parents' research, and that is why they owned those books, and they were passed down to Lilo after they died. I think this theory is super interesting, and it honestly prompts a pretty cool spin-off where Lilo becomes a CIA agent and Stitch is her psychic. I think that would be really cool, and honestly, I believe this theory. I feel like it makes a lot of sense. We don't really know what's up with Lilo and Nani's parents. I feel like overall this theory has a lot of truth to it. Like, I feel like it makes sense. Like, Cobra Bubbles is definitely not just a social worker. He, I feel like, is definitely a CIA agent. All right, the next conspiracy theory surrounds the show Wizards of Waverly Place. If you guys know anything about me, when I was in elementary school, I actually tried to make Alex Russo my entire personality. I even carried a wand in my Ugg boots to school, which is so embarrassing. But I wanted to be a mermaid, I wanted to be a wizard, I wanted every like magical aspect of life to be for me. Like, I was like, this is for me, that's that. This theory really fucked me up because I also love Harry Potter, and it shows how the two connect. So the idea is that Wizards of Waverly Place is meant to take place in an alternate universe where Harry Potter loses the Battle of Hogwarts. Voldemort becomes this all-powerful being who runs the wizard world. So the reasoning behind this theory is a lot of the magic that takes place within Wizards of Waverly Place is low-key a little dark. So leprechauns are kept in cages for people to gawk at, which is just like kind of fucked up. Also, elves get named based on what job they're going to have, which I think is pretty demeaning as well. Even down to the fact that when there's a large breach of magic, the council breaks your hands so you can no longer hold a wand, which seems a little bit dramatic if you ask me. I also think the concept of only having one wizard per family is like so cruel, but to me it kind of makes sense because you'd expect that if, you know, between three siblings, Alex, Max, and Justin, if Alex becomes the family wizard, she gets even more powerful than she was to start with because she has Max and Justin's powers as well. And I feel like that is low-key a very Voldemort thing to do, you know what I mean? You also think about it, low-key, as much as I love Alex Russo, she uses her powers for personal gain, kind of a lot. And she still comes out looking like the hero at the end of the day. I also think that wizards not being able to marry non-wizards is super classic Voldemort because he obviously hates muggles. I believe this theory. I think it makes so much sense. Obviously, Wizards of Waverly Place has a lot of nods to Harry Potter in general. They just couldn't outright say it because of like copyright reasons and stuff. But it's pretty obvious, and I just think that it is a super, super interesting concept because maybe this is what a world post-Battle of Hogwarts, but Voldemort being the winner looks like. I think it's pretty interesting because I feel like in Wizards of Waverly Place there is a lot of dark magic going on. So What do you believe? All right, the last two conspiracy theories we're gonna be talking about have to do with the Grinch. I love the Grinch. It is one of my favorite movies. It is definitely my favorite Christmas movie ever. There are definitely some interesting theories surrounding the movie that honestly just ruin it for me. So the first theory is why the Grinch looks so different from the other Who's. So the theory begins with the scene the day the Grinch is born, or delivered really, with the wind. The theory goes that the wind was blowing, because they talk about a strange wind blowing that night, that this strange wind blew the Grinch into the wrong Whoville. Theory talks about Horton Hears a Who and how the Grinch was actually supposed to end up in the Whoville from that story on the speck of dust on the clover in Horton Hears a Who. So obviously those Who's in Horton Hears a Who are very colorful, they're fluffy, they resemble the Grinch kind of a lot. Perhaps that is actually where the Grinch was meant to land. Instead, because of the strange wind that was blowing that night, he landed in the Christmas-obsessed Whoville. And that's why the Grinch feels so angry, because he feels like he doesn't belong. And the truth is that he doesn't, and he never will. He's been subjected to a world that he'll never truly fit in, which is kind of a sad theory if you think about it, but I do think it kind of makes sense. I've seen another theory that talks about how, you know, the Who's are called, it's called Whoville, they're Who's. And in the part where Cindy Lou Who is asking her dad, you know, who the Grinch is, he's like, he's not really a who, he's more of a, and she goes, a what? He's like, exactly, a what? He's more of a what? So it's like, maybe there's a Whoville, a Whatville, a Whereville, and he ended up in the wrong place. The last theory we're gonna be talking about is honestly really freaking sad about the Grinch. It surrounds Max. Max is the Grinch's dog, obviously. The Grinch explains that he hates Christmas because the Who's are all so obsessed with getting gifts. They're just so materialistic that they get so obsessed with this day, counting down the minutes. Everyone's spending so much money on gifts and time, getting people gifts, just for the gifts to end up in the trash chute that goes to Mount Crumpet that the Grinch ends up receiving. Just, he said, a few days after Christmas, everyone gets tired of their gifts and all the gifts come to him. So the theory goes that a little Who child was given a little puppy for Christmas. After a few days or weeks, they no longer wanted the puppy and he was put in the trash chute and made it all the way up to Mount Crumpet, and that is how the Grinch has Max. And honestly, it's really sad. Like, this theory makes me tear up a bit because it is low-key true. A lot of people get puppies and kittens for Christmas and they end up in the shelters and end up not being wanted, and it makes me so sad. I feel like it is like an interesting little theme about how the Grinch got Max, and I feel like it makes sense. I really believe that this theory is true, and I also believe the theory that the Grinch is actually not even the evil person in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The point of the whole movie is that the Grinch is really not even the evil person. At the end of the day, the Who's were the ones who were so materialistic, obsessed with Christmas, obsessed with gift giving. They neglected caring about their family's opinions. Like, even Cindy Lou Who herself was like, bitch, where are you Christmas? Like, I'm sad. And everyone around me is just like acting like everything's fine. And I think it's a really interesting theory. This Max theory was really sad, but I think it's an interesting theory that at the end of the day, the Who's are kind of the villain and the Grinch is like the anti-hero. Let me know what you guys think about all of these theories. That is it for today's video. If you guys liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Like I said, let me know in the comments below what you think of these conspiracy theories surrounding your favorite childhood TV shows and movies. If you have any favorite childhood TV shows or movies or actors or whatever that you want me to like look into conspiracies surrounding, please let me know and I will do that for the next video. But that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and subscribe for new videos every week, and I will see you guys later. Bye.